Hey there, cats and kitties. I am the Blues Man, Johnny Blues, and with this video, I'll discuss my thoughts on episode 4 of the anime series, Sakurada Reset. I'm actually mad digging this particular series for its cleverness and just the standing gripe that I have, though, in spite of that, it goes back to the first episode where I said it is hardly straightforward in how it's doling out its information. It's, bobbing and weaving. It's feinting one way when it goes another, suggesting one thing when another truth is actually the truth, that kind of thing. And one of the things that really fails to aid me in any way, shape, or form, in almost any way, shape, or form, is the little blurb that comes up on the bottom of the screen to tell you what day of the week it is, how many versions of this day the characters, Kei and Haruki have experienced respectively, second time through, third time through, whatever it is, trying to keep all of those previously experienced days consecutive in my mind and remembering everything that happened on those given days is something I just am not capable of without perchance, drawing a diagram for myself. And the thing is, unless they point out that there have been particular changes on a given day, you can basically sort of assume that there is no difference in a given day. They spell out, and that's very much what I rely on, the spelling out of the interactions, the dialogue, the inner monologue of Kei, to really fill in those gaps and understand for myself, okay, this is what happened the last time. This is what's happening now. If they reset, it'll be different and such like that. And that's very much how I follow along with it. And the interesting and intriguing thing is, by the end, if you make it to the finish line of a given episode, as with this one, it is no exception, is the fact that you're suddenly made miraculously aware of just how simplistic it all was from beginning to end. There's all that misdirection with the resetting and going back and forth, bobbing and weaving and everything like that. It's like looking, fixed at a pendulum going back and forth and almost tricking yourself into believing not only is it swinging back and forth, but it's going up and down as well, or diagonally or anything like that. Whereas if you refocus your efforts, you see that it's not moving at all except for back and forth. It's kind of what they're doing with the story in this series. And it was really, sort of a relief to me that we opened this episode right where we left off, with Minami, the classmate of Kei, floating above his bed in his bedroom. And I made the sort of false assumption that she was there physically manifest, that somehow she had found her way into his bedroom and was floating above his bed there physically. Whether she also had the power to teleport in his room or phase through the wall like Shadowcat from the X-Men, I did not know. Whether or not she had utilized the phasing or teleportation powers of another Sakurada region resident, something like that. I had no idea. Little could I have suspected that this was actually her spirit form, and she had been murdered. Adding insult to injury, accidentally so, by, of all people, Hitsuchi, the cat who I misassumed was actually the murder victim, as per the PV for this episode attached to the previous. Rather was he the killer, and he did it by accident because of his ability to siphon information out of things, places, people, everything along those lines, and being very much sort of a soul and information vampire. This is his subsistence. This is what keeps him nourished. Highly intriguing that, but information can really be anything, and whatever his approach was in coming face to face with Minami, his trying to, siphon that knowledge and that information out of her was knowing no end, and he went too far, a couple steps too far, and sought her untimely demise. So a lot of this stuff, there were two clinch pins in the last episode. One was the MacGuffin, whatever that was at first when we're debuted to it. We don't exactly know. We know by the end that it is, in fact, the cat, and Murase's use of said MacGuffin. Now, this episode seeks to fill your mind with a lot of alternate, information that's part of the misdirection, bobbing and weaving thing, where they're describing, the MacGuffin is actually a pebble that the boss of the bureau has in his desk drawer, and it was stolen, and, it was Minami who took it, and Hitsuchi had it at one point. This might have been the reason for his killing her. All these suggestions and speculations that the show is putting forth, it's all to bog down the simplicity of what's actually going on. There's also the added speculation from the boss guy that there was a mythic sort of MacGuffin in existence, or arguably in or not in existence, that when sought, if found, the wielder could utilize it to command, control, and power over every Sakurada region resident who has abilities. They could command and control them all. And I don't I don't really know if this show sort of has the cojones to go that far and wide, if such a MacGuffin to that extent would actually exist, and if so or if not, who might be in possession of it if it actually is in anyone's possession. Perhaps it's even the Bureau. Maybe they've already got their hands on it. Maybe it's a very malevolent thing where they're trying to keep it under wraps, and somebody may make off with it or try to utilize it. It may become the clinchpin to the sort of unresolved first couple of episodes, which were parts 1 and 2 of 3. We never got the third part, all surrounding the death of the character of Samir, which to this point, and we've seen a lot more in this episode, Kay is very, remorseful about. He's very much guilt-ridden about it, and it's affecting a lot of the choices he's making for the better, arguably so. But those clinchpins, going back to the previous episode, were the MacGuffin, the usage of the cat as an instrument to get the ball rolling for Marase to realize how the reset that Kay and Haruki utilize could benefit her in some way. The perk, the saving grace out of that whole scenario was the cat's life was able to be saved with the intervention of Nono, the cat girl, and everything like that, working in tandem with Kei and Haruki. But Marase found an alternative purpose for the utilization of this reset, which saw to her becoming maniacally murderous, which was a complete and utter falsehood. She basically got up in the faces of Kei and Haruki, approached them, threatening them with their own mortality for the simple purpose of giving them the impetus to reset again. And this was for the alternative purpose of saving Minami's life. So it's so simple in the nutshell when you realize that the whole purposes of the cat, whether it was her cat to begin with and it had actually run stray and had been killed in an accident or not, my interpretation is that was just a form and function to test the capabilities of the reset and see how she could benefit by it. Because we know, as per this episode, one of the perks of her own abilities is to make herself null and void from the effects of Kei's and Haruki's reset. She would not reset with everyone else. Mentally, she would still hold the last, day's experience memories as Kei would. And so she's been able to get around that. That's kind of why we saw in the previous episode the one part that confused me. After the reset had happened, after they talked to Nono the cat girl, you still saw Marase there. Well, that's because the reset did not impact her at all. She was still there in that moment, and Kei and Haruki had not gone that far back at that point. So she remained unaffected, and she still harbors those memories of those previous encounters with those days that are then reset and relived twice over by the end of this episode. Again, utilizing the cat to understand how exactly the reset could benefit her, and then utilizing those benefits in pretending to be murderous, psychotic, threatening, Kei and Haruki with their lives, ushering another reset along. But then, of course, Kei gets the upper hand. He's starting to realize what happened. He's kind of understood the form and function of who Marase is. And he's seen very much that, the sort of overhanging aspect goes back to Samir and Kei's discussion in the first episode about righteousness versus selfishness versus the ethics of trying to be benevolent and righteous. And if you garner any satisfaction out of doing something righteous, helping someone, if you feed someone who is starving and homeless, that gratification you get, does this not lessen your righteousness, your purity, your goodness of heart, because you are gaining some kind of self-satisfaction out of that act? Whereas someone like Haruki needs to be prompted and propelled. She cannot come to those decisions on her own, thus making her more pure. She has no impetus, she has no drive. She acts simply on impulse when sort of commanded by Kei. She's not very much thinking for herself, and she could almost appear as though she is a simpleton, but there's more going on internally. As we see, she's evolved, she's experienced a lot more emotions, she's more vivacious and outgoing. She's not so robotic and restrained as she was when we first encountered her. And this is very much the influence of Kay, his personality. But it's also to comical effect, like when he goes in to reprimand the boss guy, and he's like, I can't really take it seriously from you. And then he tells, Haruki to reprimand him. But then he's like, well, I don't know if I can really take that seriously. Maybe you should look at me more sternly. And she has to look to Kay for that approval. It's an interesting dynamic where she will not reset without Kay's insistence. And so he utilizes this to the benefit of showing what his suspicions are about Murase. The entire driving force, the entire impetus for her was the simple carrying out of the saving of Minami's life. She was doing something selfless. She was trying to save someone's life. And so she had to pretend to be a psychotic, murderous bandit that was going to take his life, use her abilities to do so, and hold no regrets, because she would then utilize that part of her abilities that made her null and void from, unraveling the memories of the previous day. She could be safe, hold on to those memories, and know what was going to happen so she could help change the events and save, preserve Minami's life. And so by the end, of course, Kay has realized all of this and decides to manipulate her back, double back on her manipulation by, getting in contact with the boss. The boss says, well, we have an agent or whatever, somebody run amok. This is Murase. Can you get in contact with her and sort of feint left where she feinted right against her, use her own sort of ultimatum against her. Are you going to help me take down the Bureau? Because I don't like what they're doing. I don't like the manipulation game and everything like that, which she was very much partaking in just moments ago. And so, of course, Kay does get in contact with her under that guise, that falsehood that he is going to. But then he, issues her a challenge which seeks to humble her. And it's the most grotesque and sort of, murderous, bloody, gory death I've seen since the latest episode of Attack on Titan Season 2, where he manipulates her, utilizing of her own abilities, to walk his head right into her phasing hand, killing himself. Shocking, terrifying. Haruki, who's standing there watching and just starts crying until the message comes in seconds later with a recorded version of his voice saying reset, which at that point, because he had just had her save, he's still right there in the here and now, with Murase feeling the impact of that and realizing she's not so monstrous and malevolent as she's pretended to be. She is very righteous in what she sought to do, what she sought to accomplish in the saving of Minami's life. The lengths to which she would go shows that she and Kay are cut very much from the same cloth. They're coming from opposite sides of the spectrum, but the end game for them both is the same. Benevolence, helping, utilizing their powers for the benefits of mankind, rather than malevolent ventures and the exploitation of and such like that. And so it's very clever by the end that he one-upped her. He managed to turn the tables back onto her, utilizing that same level of manipulation because he had one day memories up on her, and by the end, so simplistic was it. And it was that much more satisfying because I was brought to boil when I saw him, fall back on the ground dead with the hand having gone through his skull and everything like that. I'm like, they just killed off the main character. What the ever-loving F? What just happened? If she can't reset, and that's the only way she can reset is by his command, and he's dead and gone, what just happened? And of course, with that message, it all is unwound again, and it's all pitch perfection. And that was a hell of an episode. Let me put it to you that way. Otherwise, I'd love to hear from you guys in the comments below. If you've seen episode 4 of Sakurada Reset as well, if you enjoyed it as much as I did, if you were shocked as much as I was, if you're still sort of scathing at the twists and turns that are going on and the very lacking straightforwardness in all the events, if you do have a hard time following along with it, but if you agree with me that by the end, it's oh so simple and it's oh so satisfying for that simplicity. It's kind of like reading a Sherlock Holmes story where there's all this elaborate misdirection and all these facts and figures being put into your face, and then by the end, when he explains how he concluded and deduced all of the events and found the killer or unraveled the mystery, are you left like his compatriot John H. Watson, MD, and the writer and chronicler of all his adventures, left to say, my God, it's so simple. So yeah, that's going to be pretty much it for me on this one. I can't wait for the next one. And we still have that overhanging question of those first 2 episodes, parts 1 and 2 of 3. I believe that somehow, some way, Samira is coming back. She's still a very prominent character in the OP, and I don't believe for 1 minute she's gone for good. How that's going to be brought about, how Kay is going to manage to manifest that and go back to that time, I don't know. But that's part of the exciting aspect of the roller coaster ride that is this show. So, yep, I hope this video finds you well. That'll be pretty much it for me, as I say, and I will catch you all later. Peace.